Good afternoon, Scott Baker. I've been working on
Okay.
my entrance. What do you think of that?
Yes. Yeah. For those who are watching on video, Mikey did kind of like a little spin in
Oh,
his chair
yeah,
inadvertently. For
yeah,
those listening, you're like, I didn't see anything different. Thank
yeah.
you all for joining us for another edition of Lead Better Live Edition, and for this would be Friday, August 22nd edition. And the title of the field note that we're talking about here is "If you don't believe me, maybe it's time to ask your peers." And I have a feeling that this is a thorny one. This is like an odd one. It might be something that I certainly know that we will recognize the person in this field note, but how you as a leader would pull this off, I am really excited to find out.
Yeah. Now, it also stands to reason that this is like a tactic of last resort as well.
Yeah, I
That
would say so.
that
And you
you're
have to have a certain kind of rapport with the person to be able to even pull it off.
Yes, exactly. So my assumption is that the people know each other well. They've been doing one-on-ones for quite some time. There's a particular issue that's been maybe a bit of a debate. I'd like to think that that debate over what that issue is being handled in such a way that it's not confrontational, but there is this open discussion of like, do you perceive it that way? Because I don't perceive it that way. I don't really think
Right.
it's that way. And then the leader really wants this team member to, show that there's a cause and effect that's going on here. I see the cause and effect. You're not seeing the
You're
cause and
not seeing it.
effect. So let me go ahead and do that. But last resort, in the fact that a lot of what we just said as the lead up, there's like very specific recommendations on how to deliver feedback that should be prerequisite to you making this kind of, tactical recommendation for anybody. But,
Yeah,
he was a little,
you can't jump into a if you haven't done the hard work, you can't jump into a relationship and just swing this bat. It's not going
yeah,
to go well. Now, the heart of this is there is a person that you work with that's on your team. Maybe they report directly to you, and there's some ongoing aspect of how they go about life
right,
that is really disruptive to a lot of other people. It could be the way they're too intimidating. It could be that they're just, maybe they are just disruptive. Maybe they have other personal characteristics, or they make inappropriate jokes all the time. Could be any of those kinds of things. But it's not just that it's affecting their performance. That could be a factor, probably is. But you've tried to bring it to their attention, and they're still not getting the message. And so now you're going to have this conversation where you say, listen, I know we've talked about this a couple of times. I'm not seeing a lot of change. Maybe they downplay it. Well, look, I know you see it that way. I see it differently. It's just who I am. And you're like, well, look, I'm hearing about it. So what I want you to do is this. And then the field note lines out. I want you to go to your colleagues and ask this question, a particular kind of way. And then let's see where we are. Because maybe I'm curious. Maybe you'll find out something that I'm not hearing. But I think you're going to get some new insight, and I will probably too. And then let's talk about it.
right.
So now, again, very particular kind of leader can pull this off, and we should all hope to be that sophisticated. But I can definitely say I have seen leaders deal with people in the workplace where they've been disruptive. I don't think anybody was quite this elegant. And I'm sure that you've worked with people where maybe if the leader didn't deal with them this way, you were certainly hoping that they would.
Sure. Yeah. No, I had a few hotheads in a former job who everybody knew they were hotheads. Everyone kind of steered clear of them. Everyone was kind of hoping that the leader could figure out a way to corral them.
Yeah.
Right. I always had a good relationship with the hothead. But it was always with the idea of like, I worked overtime to make sure I was never the object of their derision, right? And so just the fact that I felt like I had to work overtime to not be in their warpath
Yeah.
means that I was already adjusting my normal behavior in order
Right.
to, right? So we were all adjusting. We were all like, the hothead came into the room and we were all like, and we were dying for the elegance of this kind of thing to be able to show up. But the weirdness about the hothead there that we're talking about, and there in my case, there might be like fear of like actual physical violence popping up, right?
Right.
And which is very different.
And we're talking about your mom, But
No,
Yeah.
but if you would have said my brother, that would have been even funnier. But
okay.
but no, there are other ways where people react where the violence is not physical. The violence is like someone who's trying to do reputational damage to other people, and maybe they don't even realize. So either way, you're wondering. I don't think, in thinking back, that the hothead didn't think that he was a hothead, right?
Well,
so I wonder if this only works if you're trying to prove to the person that it's a problem.
It's a problem. Well, that's a very interesting point early on in the field note, and it kind of gets to, there's a couple stages, and I do think this is a field note. This would be a practice that hopefully you as a leader might only have to do twice in your career, but the information here should fuel a way of thinking about the people on your team and a way of having the relational cadence that you would need to, that you would minimize even getting to this stage, right? But one of the points that the field note makes is that if a leader offers some feedback about that person's style, which could be in this case, that person might disagree. And their disagreement is not necessarily the problem. Right? In fact, the field note says this independence of mind, like on their own part, their agency, is reasonable. It states it that way. And it could be reasonable, is reasonable, take your definition. So I put in bold in the editing, unless, so that it would pop out to make sure that we understand, unless the focus of the feedback concerns actions or behaviors that are having a negative impact on other people. So this is not just what you're doing and you're not making your numbers or whatever is happening in your division. It's that this thing that I'm talking to you about is having a negative effect on the team. So I can't ignore it. And so at that point, the disagreement is the thing that's on the table. I'm seeing it this way, you see it this way. Well, I can go talk to the team. They're gonna probably tell me what I feel like I've already been hearing. Are you willing to go to the team? I want you to go to the team. I'm requiring you to go to the team. Depends on the circumstance or the level of that. And we get into this sort of a theoretical conversation that the person can have, and I'll get to that in a second. But having set that up, it does feel to me like this is great information for any leader to be thinking about, whether or not they have somebody on their team right now, or that they're likely to have. But at some point, you probably are going to encounter this person. And knowing about this now and being able to kind of build it into your mindset is probably helpful.
Right. No, I think that you're forcing stoicism on somebody to put them through this kind of practice, right? And I think one of the advantages of Stoic philosophy is this idea that you have the ability to kind of look at yourself in the third person and kind of recognize that what those things you are in control of and those things that you're not in control of. And so if you have somebody who doesn't have that awareness, you do need a couple of methods to where you can allow them to access this view of themselves that everyone else have. Because clearly they're not naturally receiving that access. They're not seeing it for themselves. And so
at least not enough to change it.
Yeah. Right. So to think that it matters, right? That it's disruptive, that, yeah.
All right, so let me read the question, right, or the conversation, the way that it's phrased here, and you tell me if you, Mikey Ames, think you could pull this off.
Okay. So, well, should I put myself in the, like you're talking to me? I
want you to be in the mind of the leader. Could you pull this off, right?
All right.
So, and it sets it up as saying that if you, let's say a medical patient wants to get a second opinion. So the leader is saying, I want you to get a second opinion. It's time to talk to your teammates. So the conversation could go like this. I know you don't believe me when I have repeatedly shared that your passion and intensity intimidate your colleagues' direct reports. You haven't taken this seriously or adjusted your approach, so I want you to do something for the both of us. Interview your teammates and ask them this question. How do your direct reports respond and react to my style and my advocacy? Listen to what they say. Once you've talked to everyone, let's have another conversation.
Yeah. I only think I could pull that off if I had previously established that this is something that we disagree about. If I had previously established, when I say that I know you don't believe me, and I've repeatedly shared.
It's like, you're this way and you can just ask anybody. Like,
Right.
if that's just you're blasting somebody for the first time, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So a previous conversation, maybe a week prior to this, I would probably have a conversation where I confirmed. We've talked about this kind of feedback that I've offered you in the past. It seems to me that you still just kind of don't agree that the feedback is something that you need to kind of take to heart or implement, and just establish, yes, you don't agree. Yes, there's a disagreement there.
Right.
And then this would be a second conversation. I think I would need to.
It might even be more than that, because look, if we have a whole module on feedback that we can't get into all of those behaviors, but if you're engaged with that person and talking it through in terms of getting what their sense of their perception of what the situation is better, if you've tried to say to them, well, how would you deal with fixing a problem like this, and getting them into that frame of mind, if we've gone through this a couple of rounds, and I might not maybe part of the secret here is don't make it a World War III federal case. I've thrown in many metaphors into the, right? Meaning, if I say, look, we've talked about this. Why don't you talk to your teammates?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm all wet on this. Go to them and say, I know I have a very persuasive style. Some people seem to they like it. We engage in good debate. But I'm hearing that some people are intimidated. So I know you have 7 people on your team and some of them are junior. What do you think? Do I come across too strong? And if you hear, now the other person also then has to be fairly honest, right? Because they might be, depending on the person, they might be like, no, yeah, I'm scared of you right now, my eyes are saying, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of layers on how this gets across. But as a drill, hopefully you do get some good impact. It almost has to be like, if you don't do this, we're going to have to put you in a different role in the firm, right? It has to almost have that stakes. Or else you as the leader have to say to this person in such a way to say, look, you're obviously killing it. You're doing great, which is why you can kind of get away with being the jerk sometimes. But you know that you'd like to be in the C-suite someday, and so you need to really understand this. I think that if you actually work on this and get some of this right now, that you might be able to kind of get the sandpaper on your style a little bit and maybe position yourself for an enormous opportunity in the future. Now I've got your attention in a different way. All kinds of ways to set it up to get the person into this kind of conversation. Yeah.
The hothead at the former organization that I went to, I don't know if the conversation with them was handled this way. I obviously left the organization, but I know from friends who
out of fear, you were scared of them.
That the hothead actually did have a physical altercation with somebody else in the organization after that, and they did end up relegating them to a role where they weren't on property anymore. They're now a traveling salesperson kind of thing, right?
Oh yeah.
But that was after years of understanding who this person was.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And let it go to the point where it actually did get violent and physical with people in the hallway. Right.
Yeah. And the organization decided that the answer was, let's go throw this psychopath out on the road and let the rage just kind of fill the rest of North America. Yeah, great.
Right. I would like to think you would take that to heart, right? But if there's not an awareness that it really is a problem, or that it's a problem that is going to bleed out, I don't know. For most people, this kind of feedback at the second or third or fourth degree before it even gets here is going to be effective. Right. I remember getting feedback when I was 12 years old from my 6th grade teacher. Brought me and my best friend outside saying, we were 12, and she was like, it starts to feel like the two of you are acting like teenagers, right? And we didn't know what she meant, but that's all she had to say to be like, I'm going to be more respectful on my best behavior, right? And I think about that piece of feedback still to this day, right?
There are those weird moments that just lodge themselves in our psyches.
Yeah.
Those are the inside out core memories.
Yes. But if I had, it certainly is. If I had ignored it and she came back to me a second time, I would have been mortified. It's such a core memory for me, as you referenced, that like I've been avoiding that kind of feedback ever coming to me for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
like
right.
basically be appropriate, be aware of the fact that you're acting like a jerk and you're not even taking it to heart, right?
Well,
And
look, you've got me thinking of other core memories, but I have one. I just realized I have one on this one. There's not a resolution perfectly applying, but let me just squeeze it in right at the end. And I'll try to be, I actually wouldn't want this to get back to the person. This was a long time ago, like maybe 20 years ago. Worked with a person, and I'm going to be very unspecific, but about age, gender, anything.
This isn't going to be a good podcast until we start actually airing some of this dirty laundry. So go ahead.
So, but this one was about, this person had a hygiene problem, and everybody knew it. And the very talented, smart person, and who didn't bathe that often, and it was the kind of thing that then people were positioning themselves, and I actually had to sit near this person. I wasn't the main instigator of the conversations with the person in charge, but there were conversations, and then I was asked, did I think this was a problem? And I was like, oh yeah. Right. Now, at some point, the leader did pull that person aside and said, this is what your peers are saying, right? And it got some better. It didn't get perfect, but it got some better. Now, I can't imagine a leader saying, you don't believe me that your colleagues are saying this? Go ask them, do I really smell bad? Right?
Yeah.
They're going to tell you. Right?
Yes.
I don't know how you would have had that, but like as an edge case, hopefully you don't have that situation. Most of them are milder than that in some fashion. Because
and
we don't want
you'd like to
embarrass.
think that the leader would give this person the exact way to phrase the question to you. Like if they're going to come to you and ask you about their own BO, like most nice people are going to soft pedal the answer.
Well, and part of the problem was that this person midway through the day would take their shoes off, and it was just awful. So thank you. I've put this image into everybody's minds to take you into a lovely weekend.
Okay. Well, but it's a lovely image, but also a good handle on how we might be able to work with that discussion. All right, good. Thanks very much. Nice to talk to you. We'll talk again very soon. Bye.